Everyone at the graduation turned when the Marine captain suddenly stopped mid-stride, staring as if he'd seen a ghost. His eyes locked on the quiet janitor in the back row, a single father still wearing his work uniform, clutching a crumpled bouquet he could barely afford. The man had only come to watch his twin daughters graduate, but the captain's trembling voice cut through the ceremony, sending a wave of confusion through the crowd as he said, "Sir, where did you get that tattoo?" No one could know then that this moment would unearth a secret buried for years and rewrite the lives of everyone who witnessed it. Jonathan Hale never imagined his life would look like this, pushing a mop bucket down, echoing hallways, waking before dawn, and returning home long after the world slept. But every sacrifice felt worth it when he saw his daughters smile. Emma and Grace were his world, two bright, stubborn twin girls who had somehow navigated life's storms with the grace he rarely felt he had. After his wife passed unexpectedly when the girls were only 8, Jonathan spiraled grief, bills, job loss, but the moment he saw his daughters sitting on the edge of his bed, their faces pale with fear of losing him too, he promised himself one thing: he would never fail them again. That promise led him to the night shift janitorial job at Ridgeline High School. Not glamorous, not easy, but steady. It allowed him to stay close, to keep his girls enrolled in a good school, even if he never quite belonged in the world his daughters excelled in. The twins worked hard, honor students, leaders, and today, graduation day, Jonathan wore his faded uniform because it was all he had. His hands were still calloused from scrubbing floors the night before, and his boots carried the scuffs of years of labor. But none of that mattered. He found a seat near the very back, trying to be invisible as people filtered in, dressed in suits and summer dresses. He kept his gaze forward, proud but small, unnoticed, except by one teacher who always smiled at him out of kindness. As the ceremony began, he felt a weight in his chest, bittersweet, swelling, overwhelming. His daughters were on the brink of adulthood, and somehow, despite all odds, he had gotten them here. Emma caught his eye from the stage. Her face lit up. Grace nudged her, smiling too, and Jonathan tried not to cry. He didn't want to embarrass them. When the principal announced a special surprise guest, a decorated USMC captain returning to speak, Jonathan barely paid attention. He focused on steadying his breath, clutching the tiny bouquet he had bought with spare change. But as the captain stepped up to the podium, ready to deliver the keynote speech, Jonathan looked up and froze. The captain had a familiar presence, his uniform crisp, posture razor straight. Something about him tugged at Jonathan's memory. The captain scanned the audience, giving a practiced smile. But then his eyes snagged on Jonathan. His expression faltered subtly at first, then sharply. He blinked, hard, as if trying to confirm what he saw. Jonathan's heart hammered. He lowered his eyes, uncomfortable. But the captain stepped off the stage, mid-speech. Murmurs rippled across the auditorium. The principal stuttered, unsure if this was part of the program. The twins exchanged confused glances. The captain walked down the aisle deliberately, weaving through parents until he reached the back row. Jonathan tried to rise, bow out, vanish, but he couldn't move. The captain stopped in front of him. His voice shook. The captain's face went pale. That's my unit. My father served with those men." Gasps echoed. Cameras pointed. The ceremony had halted entirely. Jonathan stared at him, speechless. He had no idea this moment would drag the past into the light and change everything that came after. The auditorium buzzed with confusion as the captain gestured for Jonathan to stand. The spotlight, once meant for graduates, fell onto a man who had spent years trying to blend into the background. Jonathan's knees trembled as he rose. He hated attention, hated eyes on him, but the captain looked at him with something far deeper than curiosity, something like awe. "My name is Captain Mason Reed," he announced loudly, addressing not only Jonathan, but the entire audience. "My father, Sergeant Thomas Reed, spoke of a man named Hale, a man who saved his life overseas." Jonathan froze. He thought he had outrun those memories. War zones, smoke, the weight of brothers, lost. After returning home, everything crumbled. His marriage, his career, his mental health. He had left the Marines quietly, never seeking recognition, never wanting to relive the blood-soaked moments he tried to forget. He had never expected anyone to remember him, let alone honor him. Captain Reed continued, his voice thick with emotion. "My father said he owed everything his return home, my very existence, to a man who dragged him out during an ambush. He never stopped searching for him. Jonathan felt his throat tighten. He remembered that night. The chaos, the fire, the desperate decision to go back for a wounded soldier even when ordered not to. He hadn't even known the soldier's name, only the weight of responsibility. I didn't know he survived, Jonathan whispered. He did, the captain said gently. He lived because of you, and he raised me to believe that true heroes don't wait for medals or praise. They serve quietly, humbly, like you. Tears burned Jonathan's eyes. He wasn't a hero. He had failed in so many ways. He had lost so much. But the captain placed a firm hand on his shoulder. You deserve to be seen. At that moment, Emma and Grace rushed toward their father. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't confused. They wrapped their arms around him tightly, tears in their eyes. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Emma whispered. Because, Jonathan said shakily, being your father has always been the honor that mattered more. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Not for the captain, not for the graduates, but for a janitor, a single father who had spent years hiding in plain sight while carrying a legacy no one knew. Even the principal wiped his eyes as he approached. Mr. Hale, after everything you've done for this school, for your daughters, for this country, we would be honored to offer you a full-time, salaried facilities supervisor position. No more night shifts, no more struggling. Jonathan stared in disbelief. His girls cried harder. Captain Reed wasn't done. And, sir, my father wanted you to have this. He handed Jonathan a medal worn, polished with care, the one Sergeant Reed had kept his whole life as a reminder of the man who saved him. Jonathan held it, trembling, feeling a weight lift from shoulders he hadn't realized were still burdened. The twins stood at his sides as the ceremony finally continued, but differently now. When Emma and Grace walked across the stage to receive their diplomas, they didn't just wave at their dad. They held their diplomas high, proud of the man who had sacrificed everything for them. And Jonathan realized something profound. He had spent years believing he was invisible, but today, the world finally saw him. And for the first time in a long time, he saw himself too. The message lingered long after the auditorium emptied. Heroes don't always wear medals. Some carry mops, some wear worn-out boots, and some quietly build futures while no one is watching, until the world finally understands the depth of their courage.